The ranger told us something strange before we started the hike. If someone calls your name from the trees, don't answer. He said it so casually that at first we thought it was a joke. Then he added one more thing. Especially if the voice sounds like someone you know. This happened during a fall trip in the mountains along the Appalachian Trail. My friend Lucas and I were hiking a remote section that passed through Pisgah National Forest. It was early November, cold air, gray sky. Most of the leaves had already fallen, which meant you could see deep into the forest between the bare trees. We planned to hike about 12 miles that day and camp somewhere along the ridge. Nothing complicated, just a quiet stretch of trail far away from the crowded parts of the mountains. At the ranger station that morning, the ranger looked over our route and nodded. Then he gave us the warning about voices in the woods. Lucas laughed as soon as we left. "Guess people get lonely out here," he said. The trail started out easy. Wide path, gentle climb through hardwood forest. The kind of hike where you fall into a rhythm and stop thinking about every step. For the first few hours, everything felt completely normal. Wind moving through the branches, occasional bird calls, our boots crunching over fallen leaves. Around mid-afternoon, the trail climbed higher onto the ridge. The forest thinned out, and the wind picked up. That's when Lucas stopped walking. "Did you hear that?" I hadn't. "What?" He turned and looked back down the trail. "I thought someone said my name." We waited for a few seconds. Nothing. Just wind moving through the trees. Lucas shrugged. "Probably the wind." We kept walking. About 10 minutes later, I heard it too. Faint, somewhere behind us. A voice. "Mark. That's my name." It sounded distant, like someone calling from deeper in the forest. I turned around. The trail behind us was empty. No hikers, no movement. Lucas looked at me. "You heard it too, right?" I nodded. Then we both remembered the ranger's warning. If someone calls your name from the trees, don't answer. So we didn't. We kept walking. The voice came again a few minutes later, this time closer. "Mark!" Clearer, more urgent. Lucas whispered, "Maybe someone's lost." That was my first thought too, but something felt wrong. If someone was on the trail behind us, we would see them. The forest was open, no thick undergrowth, nothing blocking the view. Yet there was no one there. The voice called again. Now it sounded almost exactly like my brother. Same tone, same way he says my name. I stopped walking. Lucas grabbed my arm immediately. "Don't," he said quietly. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no wind. Just that voice echoing between the trees. "Mark, wait!" It sounded closer now, like whoever was calling had moved off the trail and into the woods. We started walking faster. The voice followed, sometimes behind us, sometimes to our left. Then suddenly from the right, always just out of sight. It kept using my name over and over. Lucas finally whispered, "That's not a person." We didn't run. Running in the mountains is how people get hurt. But we moved as fast as we safely could along the trail. The voice stopped for a while, long enough that we thought it might be gone. Then it came back, right behind us. So close, it felt like someone was standing just a few feet away. "Mark!" I spun around with my headlamp ready. The trail was empty, but something in the trees moved. A tall shape slipping between the trunks, too fast to see clearly. Lucas saw it too. We didn't say anything, we just kept moving. Another mile later, we finally reached a small shelter along the trail. a wooden structure hikers sometimes use during storms. There were already 2 other hikers there. We asked them if they had seen anyone else on the trail. They both shook their heads. "No one all day," one of them said. That night, we told them about the voice. They looked at each other. One of them said quietly, "Yeah, people talk about that sometimes." The next morning, we hiked back to the ranger station. We told the same ranger what happened. He didn't seem surprised. He just sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Did it use your name?" he asked. I nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I still think about whenever I hike in the mountains. "About 10 years ago, a search team went missing on that ridge," he said. "They were looking for a lost hiker." Lucas asked what that had to do with the voice. The ranger looked out the window toward the mountains. "The last radio transmission we ever got from them," he paused, "was one of the searchers saying he could hear his own name being called from the woods." Looking back, then he looked back at us. "And every group that reports the voice says the same thing." I asked what that was. The ranger answered without hesitation, "It always knows your name, and it never calls the same one twice." The ranger told us something unusual before we started the hike. "If you find an old cabin deep in the woods, don't sleep in it." Then he paused and added one more thing. "And if there's already a fire burning inside, leave immediately." We thought it was just another story meant to scare tourists. It wasn't. This happened during a late October backpacking trip near Glacier National Park. That time of year when the park is almost empty. Most visitors are gone. The nights are cold, and the mountains feel a lot bigger when there's no one else around. My friend Ethan and I planned a 2-day hike along a remote trail that ran along the edge of the park. We checked in at a ranger station that morning and logged our route. When the ranger saw where we planned to camp, he frowned slightly. "You probably won't see anyone out there," he said. Then he gave us the warning about the cabin. Ethan laughed as soon as we stepped outside. "Every park has a haunted cabin story," he said. That seemed like the obvious explanation. We started hiking around noon. The trail climbed slowly through dense pine forest, following a narrow valley between 2 ridges. For hours, we didn't see another person, just wind moving through the trees and the distant sound of a creek somewhere below the trail. By late afternoon, clouds rolled over the mountains. The temperature dropped quickly. We still had a couple miles before the campsite marked on our map. Then Ethan spotted something through the trees. A structure, half hidden between tall pines. A cabin. At first we thought it must be an old ranger shelter, but when we checked the map again, nothing was marked there. Still, the weather was getting worse. Cold wind, light snow starting to fall. So we walked closer. The cabin was small, rough wooden walls, a slanted metal roof, one window facing the trees, and smoke coming from the chimney. Ethan stopped. "You see that?" I nodded. Someone was clearly inside. We walked up to the door and knocked. No answer, but we could hear the sound of a fire crackling inside. Ethan knocked again. "Hello? Anyone in there?" Still nothing. The door wasn't locked. When Ethan pushed it open, warm air spilled out into the cold forest. Inside the cabin was a single room, a small table, 2 old chairs, and a stone fireplace with a fire burning brightly. But there was no one there. No backpack, no gear, no food. Nothing that suggested someone had been living there. Just the fire. Ethan stepped inside and looked around. "Maybe someone went to collect wood," he said. That made sense. The fire was strong. Someone must have been there recently. But something about the place felt wrong. The air smelled strange. Not like fresh wood smoke. More like old dust. I walked over to the window. Outside, snow was falling harder now. The forest looked darker than it had a few minutes earlier. Then I noticed something on the floor near the fireplace. Footprints. But they didn't lead to the door. They came from the back wall. I stared at them for a moment. They began near the fireplace, then walked across the floor and stopped in the middle of the room, like someone had simply disappeared. Ethan saw them too. It's weird. That's when we heard the sound. Outside. A slow crunch of footsteps in the snow, walking around the cabin. We froze. The steps circled the walls once, then stopped directly outside the door. Someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. Ethan whispered, "Did you see anyone out there?" I shook my head. Neither of us moved. Another knock. Louder this time, then a voice. Soft, barely above a whisper. "Come out." Ethan stepped toward the door. I grabbed his arm immediately. "Wait!" Something felt very wrong. If someone had been inside earlier, why would they knock? The voice came again, this time from the window behind us. "Come out." We turned. There was no one there. Just darkness between the trees. Then the knocking started again. But now it was coming from the wall behind the fireplace. Slow. Hollow. Like someone tapping from inside the wood. Ethan backed away. The fire suddenly flared higher. Shadows filled the room, and the footprints on the floor weren't there anymore. That was enough. We ran out the door and into the snow. Neither of us looked back. We hiked nearly 3 miles in the dark before stopping. The next morning, we returned to the ranger station. We told them about the cabin. The ranger listened quietly. Then he pulled out a large park map. "Show me where it was." We pointed to the valley where we'd left the trail. He stared at the map for a moment, then shook his head. "There's no cabin there." I told him we slept inside it. He looked at us carefully, then opened a drawer and took out an old photograph. It showed a burned structure deep in the forest. Nothing left but blackened beams. The date printed at the bottom read 1983. That was the last cabin in that valley, he said. It burned down 40 years ago. Ethan asked the question neither of us wanted to think about. If it burned down, what did we find? The ranger didn't answer immediately. He just said something that made my stomach drop. "Every few winters, someone reports smoke in that valley." Then he looked at us. "And sometimes, there are fresh footprints in the snow, leading to where the door used to be." The ranger warned us before we started hiking. "Some trails aren't empty," he said. "And if you hear footsteps behind you, don't turn around." I didn't understand at first. It sounded like one of those old warnings meant to scare tourists. This happened in early October, along a backcountry trail near Grand Teton National Park. My friend Ryan and I planned a 3-day hike into the remote high country. It was early fall, Cold mornings, golden leaves, and the first taste of snow at higher elevations. We signed in at the ranger station and explained our route. The ranger gave us the usual advice about bears and weather. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "If you hear someone following, don't stop, keep moving, and don't look back." Ryan laughed. "Sure, like some horror movie." I smiled, but couldn't shake a little unease. The hike started normally. The trail followed a narrow creek, winding between pine trees and boulders. Birds chirped, squirrels scampered across roots, and the air smelled crisp and clean. By late afternoon, we reached a ridge. From here, the trail plunged steeply into a valley. The forest was quieter now. Too quiet. Ryan was ahead of me when I heard it. Step. Pause. Step. I froze. The steps weren't fast, not like someone running. Slow, deliberate, matching my pace perfectly. "Ryan?" He turned. "What?" "Did you hear that?" He stopped and listened, then nodded, a faint frown on his face. It continued. Step, pause, step, always behind us.
Never ahead, never beside, just behind. We picked up the pace, then ran when the path got steep. The sound kept pace, not chasing us, just following. By the time darkness fell, we had covered nearly 2 miles. Our headlamps cut thin cones of light through the trees. Shadows stretched unnaturally, and the sound never stopped. We paused to catch our breath near a small clearing. I turned my head slightly. Nothing. But the sound didn't stop. Step, pause, step. Ryan whispered, "It's not human." I nodded, too afraid to speak. We decided to keep moving, even though our map showed no trail here. Somehow, instinct guided us. After what felt like hours, we stumbled onto the main trail again. Wide, familiar, safe. The footsteps stopped the instant we reached it. We ran the last mile to our car, never looking back. At the ranger station the next morning, we told the ranger what happened. He listened quietly, then leaned back. "You saw it too, then?" What do you mean?" Ryan asked. "Footsteps in the mountains," the ranger said. "They've been reported for decades, always matching the pace of hikers, never attacking, just following." I asked him why. He shook his head. "No one knows, but there's one thing they always do." "What?" "They only follow hikers who wander off the main trail, and they never make a mistake. Always behind you, always keeping pace. And sometimes," he paused, "sometimes they're waiting for you to stop." We left the park that morning. I never hiked that backcountry trail again. Even now, when I hear footsteps in the dark, I wonder if it's just me, or if it's still following. The first warning came from the park ranger at the trailhead. "Do not take the old trail that splits off the main ridge," he said. "Some people go up there and never come back. The forest doesn't lose them. It keeps them." I laughed at first. My friend Eric, who's been hiking since he was a kid, laughed too. "It's just local legend," he said. This happened in early May, in the mountains near Estes Park, not far from Rocky Mountain National Park. Snow was melting, but winter hadn't fully let go yet. The forest felt half asleep, half frozen. Streams ran fast with meltwater. The air smelled of wet pine and cold stone. We were planning an overnight hike, just the two of us, nothing extreme. A simple route along the lower trails.
The ranger had warned us about the upper ridge: snow slides, fallen trees, dangerous ground. But when we reached the fork near midday, we noticed a narrow path cutting up into thicker forest. It wasn't on our map, but there were footprints, fresh, clear, muddy, broken branches. Someone had been there recently. Eric's eyes lit up. "Maybe it reconnects to the ridge," he said. And just like that, we made the worst decision possible. We followed it. At first, it was like a secret trail, steep, efficient, quiet. The forest was still normal: birds, wind, running water. But after 40 minutes, something changed. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence. No birds, no wind. Even the stream sound vanished. Then we saw the first marker: a strip of red cloth tied to a branch. Not official trail tape, just torn fabric. We saw another and another, each tied higher than the last, like someone tall had passed.
Eric joked about a giant. I laughed nervously. The path narrowed, became a line of disturbed ground winding through the dense trees. The footprints changed too. Not boots anymore. They were long, thin, almost as if whoever walked here was stepping on the front of their feet. I stopped. "We should go back." Eric agreed. But the moment we turned around, the trail behind us didn't look the same. The line we had followed up was gone. Just forest. And those red cloth strips, now leading deeper. We followed them anyway. 10 minutes later, Eric froze. Ahead was a clearing. In the center stood a dead tree, completely stripped of bark. Around its trunk, dozens of red strips tied in circles, as if someone had walked around it endlessly. A sudden instinctive dread hit me. Not panic, not fear, just knowing we were somewhere forbidden. Eric whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first I didn't. Then a faint crunch, slow, uneven steps, coming from the trees behind us. Too heavy for an animal, too irregular for a human. We didn't speak. We started walking, faster, then running. Branches snapped behind us. The sound matched our pace, not chasing, just following. After what felt like forever, we burst onto a familiar trail. Wide, clear, marked, safe. We didn't stop moving until we reached the lower trailhead. At the ranger station, we told them about the path. The ranger frowned. "There is no trail there," he said. "Hasn't been in decades. Old logging route from the 70s. Closed after several disappearances." He asked exactly where we entered. We showed him on the map. He went quiet, then said something that still haunts me. "That area's been empty since the closures." No one hikes there anymore. I insisted we saw fresh tracks. "No," he said. "You saw something. The forest, it doesn't forget. It keeps them. And sometimes it lets people see the trail again. But not for long." I still hike, but now, if a path isn't on the map, I don't care how used it looks. Because sometimes the path you think someone else took before you was never meant for people at all. And the footprints, they weren't human.